The Outermost House, A Year of Life on the Great Beach of Cape Cod by Henry Beston. Chapter 1, The Beach, Section 3. The sandbar of Eastham is the sea wall of the inlet. Its crest overhangs the beach, and from the high, wind-trampled rim, a long slope well overgrown with dune grass descends to the meadows on the west. Seen from the tower at Norset, the land has an air of geographical simplicity. As a matter of fact, it is full of hollows, blind passages, and amphitheaters in which the roaring of the sea changes into the far roar of a cataract. I often wander into these curious pits. On their floors of sand, on their slopes, I find patterns made by the feet of visiting birds. Here, in a little disturbed and claw-marked space of sand, a flock of larks has alighted. Here, one of the birds has wandered off by himself. Here are the deeper tracks of hungry crows. Here, the webbed impressions of a gull. There is always something poetic and mysterious to me about these tracks in the pits of the dunes. They begin at nowhere, sometimes with the faint impression of an alighting wing, and vanish as suddenly into the trackless nowhere of the sky. Below the eastern rim, the dunes fall in steeps of sand to the beach. Walking the beach close in along these steeps, one walks in the afternoon shade of a kind of sand escarpment, now 7 or 8 feet high and reasonably level, now 15 or 20 feet high to the top of a dome or mound. In 4 or 5 places, storms have washed gullies or cuts clean through the wall. Dune plants grow in these dry beds, rooting themselves in under old, half-buried wreckage, clumps of dusty miller, Artemisia stellariana being the most familiar green. The plant flourishes in the most exposed situations. It jumps from the dune rim to the naked slopes. It even tries to find a permanent station on the beach. Silvery gray-green all summer long. In autumn, it puts on gold and russet golden colorings of singular delicacy and beauty. The grass grows thickest on the slopes and shoulders of the mounds, its tall leaves enclosing intrusive heads and clumps of the thick fleshed dune goldenrod. Still lower down the slope, where the sands open and the spears rise thin, the beach pea catches the eye with its familiar leaf and faded topmost bloom. Lower still, on desert-like floors, are tussock mats of poverty grass and the flat green stars of innumerable spurges. The only real bushes of the region are beach plum thickets, and these are few and far between. All these plants have enormously long taproots which bury themselves deep in the moist core of the sands. The greater part of the year, I have 2 beaches, one above, one below. The lower or tidal beach begins at mean low water and climbs a clean slope to the high water mark of the average low course tide. The upper beach, more of a plateau in form, occupies the space between high water and the dunes. The width of these beaches changes with every storm and every tide, but I shall not be far out if I call them both an average 75 feet wide. Unseasonable storm tides and high course tides make of the beach one vast new floor. Winter tides narrow the winter's upper beach and often sweep across it to the dunes. The whole beach builds up in summer as if each tide pushes more and more sand against it out of the sea. Perhaps currents wash in sand from the outer bars. It is no easy task to find a name or a phrase for the color of East Ham sand. Its tone, moreover, varies with the hour and the seasons. One friend says yellow on its way to brown, another speaks of the color of raw silk. Whatever color images these hints may offer to a reader's mind, the color of the sand here on a June day is as warm and rich a tone as one may find. Late in the afternoon, there descends upon the beach and the bordering sea a delicate overtone of faintest violet. There is no harshness here in the landscape line, no hard northern brightness or brusque revelation. There is always reserve and mystery, always something beyond, on earth and sea, something which nature, honoring, conceals. The sand here has a life of its own, even if it is only a life borrowed from the wind. One pleasant summer afternoon, while a high, gusty westerly was blowing, I saw a little wind devil, a miniature tornado, 6 feet high, rush at full speed out of a cut, whirl itself full of sand upon the beach, and spin off breakerwood. As it crossed the beach, the devil caught the sun, and there burst out of the sand smoke a brownish prism of burning, spinning, and fantastic color. South of me, the dune I call Big Dune now and then goes through a curious performance. Seen lengthwise, the giant has the shape of a wave, its slope to the beach being a magnificent fan of purest wind-blown sand, its westward slope a descent to a sandy amphitheater. During a recent winter, a Coast Guard key post was erected on the peak of the dune. The feet of the night patrols trod down and nicked the crest, and presently this insignificant notch began to work and deepen. It is now 8 or 9 feet wide and as many deep. From across the marshes, it might be a kind of great, roundish bite out of the crest. On windy autumn days, when the sand is still dry and alive, and westerly gusts and currents take on a genuine violence, the loose sand behind the dune is whirled up by the wind and poured eastward through this funnel. At such times, the peak smokes like a volcano. The smoke is now a streaming blackish plume, now a thin old ivory wraith, and it billows, eddies, and pours out as from a sea Vesuvius. Between the dunes and the marshes, an irregular width of salt hay land extends from the sand slopes to the marshier widths of tidal land along the creeks. Each region has its own grasses, the meadows being almost a patchwork of competing growth. In the late summer and the autumn, the marsh lavender, thin strewn but straying everywhere, lifts its cloud of tiny sun-faded flowers above the tawny, almost deer-colored grasses. The marsh islands beyond are but great masses of thatch grass rising from falls of sodded mud and sand. There are hidden pools in these unvisited acres which only sunset reveals. The wild ducks know them well and take refuge in them when stalked by gunners. How singular it is that so little has been written about the birds of Cape Cod. The peninsula, from an ornithologist's point of view, is one of the most interesting in the world. The interest does not center on the resident birds, for they are no more numerous here than they are in various other pleasant places. It lies in the fact that living here, one may see more kinds and varieties of birds than it would seem possible to discover in any one small region. At Eastham, for instance, among visitors and migrants, residents and casuals, I had land birds and moor birds, marsh birds and beach birds, sea birds and coastal birds, even birds of the outer ocean. West Indian hurricanes, moreover, often catch up and fling ashore here curious tropical and semi-tropical forms, a glossy ibis in one form, a frigate bird in another. When living on the beach, I kept a particularly careful lookout during gales. I close this chapter with what seems to me the most interesting detail for a naturalist's ear. Eastham Bar is only 3 miles long and scarce a quarter of a mile wide across its sands. Yet, in this little world, nature has already given her humbler creatures a protective coloration. Stop at the Coast Guard station and catch a locust on the station lawn. We have the maritime locust here, and having caught him, study him well, you will find him tinted with green. Go 50 feet into the dunes and catch another, and you shall see an insect made of sand. The spiders, too, are made of sand. The phrase is none too strong, and so are the toads that go beach combing on moonlit summer nights. One may stand at the breaker's edge and study a whole world in one's hand. So, choosing to remain upon the beach, I look forward to October and winter and the great migrations. Earliest autumn and September now enclose the earth. My western windows are most beautiful in early evening. On these lovely, cool September nights, the level and quiescent dust of light which fills the sky is as autumnal in its coloring as the earth below. There is autumn on the earth and autumn overhead. The great isles of tawny orange smoldering into darkness. The paths of the channels stilled to twilight bronze. The scarlet meadows deepening to levels of purple and advancing night. All these mount in exhalation of color to the heavens. The beam of Noced, entering my northern casement, brushes a recurrent pallor of light across a part of my bedroom wall. A first flash, a second flash, a third flash, and then a little interval as the dark sector of the lens travels between the forecastle and the flame. On bright moonlit nights, I can see both the whitewashed tower and the light. On dark nights, I can see only the light itself suspended and secure above the earth. It is dark tonight, and over the plains of ocean, the autumnal sky rolls up the winter stars.